Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Association for the Study of African American Life and History's inaugural featured author event, part of the 93rd Annual Black History Luncheon. My name is Pero Dagbovi. I am currently the editor of the Journal of African American History. As you all know, our illustrious founder, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, founded this journal, the Journal of African American History, in 1916, and I know that he would be very happy right now with such an event that we are about to engage with. This morning, we will be blessed to hear from 4 very accomplished women. I will begin by briefly introducing them, and then following that, we'll pose some questions to our members on the stage right now to respond to. And let me just offer a disclaimer, and that is that my introductory remarks and introductions to the panelists today does no justice to them. If you need more information, please go online. You can find a lot out about these very accomplished women here. Dorothy Butler Gilliam has been a journalist for more than 6 decades. In 1961, she became the first Black woman reporter for the Washington Post. She would later become an editor and a columnist for the paper before retiring in 2003. Her most recent publication is entitled Trailblazer, a pioneering journalist's fight to make the media look more like America, published in 2019. The next 3 individuals I'll be introducing have authored the book For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Politics, published in 2018. And it's recently come to my attention that this publication has been nominated for 2 NAACP Image Awards in 2 different categories. Yolanda Caraway is the founder of Caraway Group Incorporated, a nationally recognized public relations and public affairs agency. She has played a major role in shaping the goals and objectives of the National Democratic Party. The Reverend Leah Daughtry is a nationally recognized preacher, speaker, organizer, leader, strategist, and CEO of the 2008-2016 Democratic National Conventions. And Minion Moore, a partner at the Dewey Square Group, was formerly CEO of the Democratic National Committee and served as the assistant to the President of the United States and director of the White House Office of Public Liaison and director of the White House Political Affairs under President Bill Clinton. So as you can clearly see, we have distinguished Black women with us today to talk about their publications, to talk about their experiences. And so I'm going to pose a few questions as a point of departure that will lead to the responses. Following that, we will hopefully have some time to pose some questions from the audience. I'd like to begin by asking our panelists today, what was it that made you all decide to publish the books that you've published at this juncture in time? It's very clear that you are very open in offering us testimonies, personal stories of struggle. Why at this point?
Well, I'll start. Can you hear me? It would help if I turned it on, would it? Can you hear me now? It was fortuitous that my book was published now. I started writing this book before 2017. So, but I was really, really happy that this book, which talks about my role as the first African American reporter at the Washington Post, but it also talks about my fight and the fight of many other mostly Black, but other people of color, to really make the media look more like America. And when the present occupant of the White House started talking about fake news and calling people at the newspaper for which I'd worked, calling them enemy of the people. I just was thrilled that my book came out when it did. I wish I could say that I could have seen the future. But I think what I'm very happy about is the opportunity I now have on many shows and whenever I go to a book signing, you know, to really talk about the complexities of the media, but also the importance of the media, and to really make a statement against what is being said now that is so detrimental to the democracy, not just to media. As I said, mine was more fortuitous than planned.
I guess thank you all for inviting us. Well, unfortunately, I wish we were as gracious about why we decided to write the book as Dorothy was. Unfortunately for us, we had been dealing with one of our friends who was an HBO writer. She was a big Hollywood writer, and she used to come to some dinners that we sponsored, and she thought that it might be interesting if we did a pilot for HBO. So she began to craft up a treatment, as they call it, and then one day we got a call saying they wanted us to come out to Hollywood to actually interview with them to talk about this series. So, you know, we thought, you know, it was four of us. Donna Brazil, who's actually not here, she's over at the DNC meeting. We thought we needed to leave one person behind. You know, like when you do the cabinet meetings, you got to leave one person behind. So she's across the street. But we thought that we would just go out. But, you know, black women say, okay, we'll go out to California. We're going to have us a good time. We're going to eat on them. We're going to sleep up in a hotel. And it's just going to be great. Yes, that's right. Free drinks, all the works. We get out there, we're in this big meeting with all the big white Hollywood executives, and so, you know, we start talking to each other and not talking to them, and then all of a sudden they say they want this, and we go, want what? And they want this series. So we're like, oh, okay. So we come out, we fast forward, we get a lawyer. So we started getting the actual script. And then I'm gonna see, the one that I love, well, my character was a black woman who worked for the White House, which I did. And I was dating a New York Times reporter who was white, which I wasn't, but we were trading secrets. And I'm like, okay, they might do that now, but I don't, So I'm like, that's too similar to my life. So then Leah, of course, who is a renowned pastor and comes from this big pastoral family, was gonna get put out to church, for real.
So my character was Pentecostal pastor of a DC church which is all true, but she also has some children of unknown origin. She was dating the deacon.
He was married.
He was married, and it was a problem. And there was no way I was going to be able to convince the church mothers that this was not me. I said, y'all gonna get me called before the mother's board. I'm gonna lose my pulpit. And they kept saying, but it's not you, it's not you. I said, but it is me. It's too many of the same markers for me to be able to tell folk that it's not me. And so no, I'm a 5th generation pastor. There was no way I was gonna survive in the church with that narrative. And so we had to make a decision that was, if they could not make the story, they either had to completely change our characters to not resemble us, or they need to make them truer than life. We could not have our story to be told where Mignon was trading secrets in the White House with the New York Times, and Yolanda's and Donna's character was named Monica.
And my character's name was Edith Ann. Edith Ann.
So we opted to, we went back and forth, and we opted to pull out of the deal. And you know we were serious because we gave the money back. And because we just didn't want our stories to be told in that kind of manner. There's enough trouble, we have enough problems. with poor imaging on television now, and we didn't want to add to that. So we pulled out of the deal, and our friend
Isaiah Thomas, we did get a brother in to see if we could salvage this any kind of way. And he read it, and he said, you all don't want to do this. And it's too much history for young women who are going to be coming behind you. And I'm not trying to take any money. A millionaire trying to tell us he ain't trying to take no money from us. But he was really right. And so we just pulled back and just decided to do the book.
We met with a publisher in New York who actually introduced us to the author that we used to help pull everything together, and we decided we were going to do a book. Now, the timing was just, I say it's divine, because it wasn't planned. I mean, we didn't know. When you write a book, the publisher gives you a date. You don't know what the date's going to be. But it turned out that it was perfect timing for us, right before the election, and it's been really wonderful going around the country talking to people about our experiences, and it's just, we learned a lot about each other in writing it that we didn't know, and just remember that a lot of you, we're all the same age group, I think, most of us, and if you read the book, you'll remember a lot of those stories and probably hear things that you didn't know about, some secrets. We told all the stories we could tell.
Speaking of those stories that you couldn't tell, I remember reading the introductory remarks in For Color Girls Who Have Considered Politics, and you all articulated that you felt like, quote, somewhat hidden figures in American politics, end quote. Similarly, while reading Trailblazer, there was a discussion about the tension and the presence within the newsroom. That is, the tensions that you felt as a black woman in the newsroom and the prejudice you experienced in the newsroom. Could you all perhaps relate to the audience some of the challenges that you faced as being the only ones and being the so-called representatives of the race in the various institutions that you were operating in?
Well, one of the challenges I faced was the fact that in 1961, when I came as a reporter for the Washington Post and the first female, was that Washington was a very segregated city. And just the action of doing my job when I got an assignment to go out and cover a story, come back in, it was almost impossible to get a taxi cab near the Post. The taxi cabs would see me, and they'd kind of pull up to be sure, because there weren't even that many African Americans working down there, in terms of downtown Washington, where the Post was located. So they would come in me, and then they would hit the accelerator, and there I would be. And of course, because time is of the essence in daily newspaper, that was a real problem. But of course, I also knew that I couldn't come back and tell everybody what went on, because that would make it very easy to say, well, we tried to hire a black woman, but you see, cabs wouldn't pick her up. It wasn't our fault. It was the city. So that was one problem. Fortunately, I had also taken shorthand when I was in undergraduate. I went to a Catholic women's undergraduate school in Louisville for a couple of years before I went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, to study journalism. And at that school, we learned how to take shorthand. So sometimes I'd be out trying to hail a cab, take shorthand, using my shorthand to write the story, just to give me extra time to make the deadline. And those were the kind of things that happened on a ongoing basis. I think the other thing about being, being a first, it was that I was puzzled by the way, white people treated me. I grew up in the segregated South, mostly in Louisville, Kentucky. But there would be some colleagues who would say, hello, and have a little conversation in the newsroom. But when they saw me on the street, they would pretend they didn't know me. And I thought, anybody else have that experience? So I'm speaking for all of us here. It was just a lot of small things. But that kind of humiliation and not having anybody to really share with, except one, there were two black men there when I got there. And one of them, Luther Jackson, he was somebody I could really share with and talk with. But other than that, it was just very, very challenging. I felt like I came in with two extra weights, like race and gender, and diving into this sea of white men, and they didn't have to carry anything extra. In fact, they are getting a push from the whole society. So, anyway.
First of all, can I just say to the goddess over here, part of her journey has helped our lives, and we want to thank you so much, because it was her pen that wrote about people that look like us, and those black people who paved the way in those newsrooms were really our anchors, because we just didn't have anybody white writing about us. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Donna and I know a lot of people are probably puzzled about why we have the title that we have on the book, but Donna and I were working at the Dukakis-Benson campaign in 1988, and so the senior staff came to us and said, we were all like on the senior staff floor. She was a deputy political director, I was a deputy field director, and they came to us and told us they needed our office and that we would have to move down to another floor. And so, me and Donna looked at each other and said, well, if we move down to another floor, we ain't gonna be near the power nor the money, and so we're gonna be relegated to fighting every day for our space. So, as Donna likes to tell the story, she says 5 o'clock sharp, they go out for cocktails. So when they went out for cocktails, we went downstairs dutifully, but when they went out for cocktails, we went back upstairs, we confiscated the chairman's office, we brought some long tables in the office, and we started writing on pieces of paper, Ida B. Wells, Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, and then we stuck on the door, for Colored Girls, We Shall Not Be Moved, and that's how we really got the title, and we did not get moved.
And I agree with you, Dorothy. I mean, so many times you meet with people and then you see them outside and they look right through you. It's like, I'm sorry. You look. I was agreeing with what Dorothy said about meeting people and working with them, and then you go out on the outside and they walk right past you and they don't even know who you are. I think we've all been through that. But I wanted to tell a story about the Fairness Commission. When Reverend Jackson ran in 1984, one of the concessions he got from the Democratic Party was that they were going to put together, every 4 years they do a rules commission and decide what the rules are going to be for the next presidential election. Well, this one, there were some certain things that he wanted to get out of that, which was like, we used to have what was called winner take all. Whoever got the highest vote getter was, got all the delegates. Well, he wanted to change to proportional representation, which gave everybody a shot. So no matter how many votes you got, if you got at a certain level, you would get delegates. And that's one of the concessions that he was able to get in 1984. And he requested that Maynard Jackson, who was the mayor of Atlanta at the time, be the chair of that commission. So I was working at the DNC at the time for Chairman Paul Kirk, and it was his decision who ran the commission and everything. And so we had a conversation, and he had a meeting with Reverend Jackson, and I felt a little weird because I was getting caught up in the middle of all of it, but it was, they kind of talked at each other and really didn't talk to each other. So Paul goes back to the office and he decides that he doesn't want Maynard Jackson to be chair because that would be seen as giving in to Reverend Jackson. Now, he didn't say that to me, but I know that was the reason. So I made a suggestion. I said, I always say if you know you're going to have to compromise, then you pick the compromise. So I said, well, why don't you do Dutch Morial, who was the chair, who was the mayor of New Orleans at the time, and I think he was the chair of the National Conference of Mayors also. So he thought about it for a minute, and then he decided he was going to pick somebody else, who was a wonderful, decent person who I liked very much, but it was a white person. So I was pretty pissed. So I kind of left the office and went home. And I got a call a couple hours later from his deputy and asking me if I would come back and be the executive director of the Fairness Commission. And I said, well, I have to think about that. So I called Maynard Jackson, and he called me back that night, and I had a wonderful conversation I'll never forget with him. And I told him what happened, and I was so upset about it. And he said, Yolanda, you take that job. You take that job, and you make sure it's fair and it's done right. And so I did. And we changed the rules of the party.
And she's actually been a little shy about this. She changed the rules of the party so much so that Barack Obama became the first president, black president. Those rules caused Hillary Clinton to be the first woman.
Well, it's always hard when you're the only one in the room. I don't think any of us set out to be first. We were just doing the work, and sometimes doing the work means you're first. So I'm the first person to serve twice as the CEO of the convention. I didn't start out to be the first, and it's a shame that we're still having first. And hopefully the day will come when there will be no more firsts, that we will have broken all those barriers. But I was raised in a household that of activists, of people who, I used to go to Saturday schools to learn black history. That's what we did. We did it in church, but on Saturday we went to Mrs. Gibbs' Saturday school, and where we learned all the nations on the continent, all the kings and queens of ancient Africa. So I was well prepared and knowledgeable about our history before I got to college. My father said, if I'm waiting for you to get black history when you get to college, I waited too long. I can't depend on them to teach you that. You need to know it already. So by the time I got to Dartmouth, because I went to Dartmouth, ain't no black people up there. And I see one of my former professors, Dr. Evelyn, who was with me during my freshman year, and then she had the good sense to get out. So it's a totally different environment. But if I had not had the grounding and the foundation of my Brooklyn community, and the Herbert Daughtry's and the Janetta Coles and the people who poured into us and ensured that we knew our history, I would not have survived Dartmouth. I would not have been able to go to the Hill, which is where I started in Washington, and then to the DNC, because my head would not have been in the right place to understand where our people came from, what our rich history was, and the shoulders that I stood on. So when I got there at the DNC, I understand, or as we all do, that when I walk into those rooms, I'm not walking as Leah. I'm walking as all the people who never got a chance, who don't have a voice, and so I have a responsibility, as we all feel, we have a responsibility to our people when they're in those rooms. It's not about me and my wallet and my pocketbook. It's about what is going to deliver the best results and how do we best represent our community. And I know that's not popular these days. People want to be individuals, and I'm not carrying the community. I'm carrying the community.
Me too. Me too.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And that is, and it is an honor. It is an honor and a privilege to walk into those rooms and be able to say, I represent a people. Not because of what I think they know, but because I'm from the people. And I've been raised by the people, so I have the ethos of the people. And I can say, this is what will work for black people, and this was what will not work for black people. This is how you're going to treat us. These are the policies that will work for the majority, and these are not, and I'm willing to stand on that. And if it means I got to leave the room and go tell somebody else, and go call Miss Dorothy and say, Miss Dorothy, this is what they're getting ready to do. So that we can advance, but in all things, I think for all of us, our ethos has been, because oftentimes we are the only ones in the room. It's when we started, it was certainly true. Now there are more, and that's great. Never enough, but there are more. But we've always got to walk in that room, understand, as Maya said, I come as one, I stand as 10,000. And so the 10,000 who are with me, I want them to be proud of who I am in that room.
As you can tell, we can certainly learn a lot from these personal histories. And I'm going to ask one last brief question, and then we'll follow that up by opening it up for questions from the audience. And I believe we have a microphone here. But before getting to the questions from the audience, which we will do very shortly, I would just like you all to talk to the upcoming generations, late millennials, Gen Zers. What type of advice would you give, particularly to black women who are charting their life and career and seek to exist within institutions that you all have existed in and transformed?
You know, the beauty of this tour has really opened our eyes to not just where black women are, but where our black children are. And there is a thirst and a hunger to do good and to do right. So it has really caused me to, Leah uses this phrase about me, I will take every broken wing and bring them in. But you know what they want for us, first of all, to know that we see them. Not the way we want to see them, but we see them as they are. If we could get to that space first before we start giving our advice to them, then they're very open. You know, I think the most important thing they have to understand about this life and this career, it is still a very conservative world. And they're very open. And I try to tell them, don't put the bikinis on the Instagram every day. Put something on your body. You know, men, don't be cursing on Twitter. You know, and those are just some basic little advice, but the most important thing when they step into I think the professional world, if they can just have a little courage. But they don't go in with courage because they disconnect themselves from the community. Because they either think we're too old or, not wise enough. But I say, and you know what Reverend Jackson said to me, they're not hiring you to out-white them. They are hiring you to help them understand our community. So my advice is always get to know everybody you can in your community first, and then spread your wings so that when something happens, you will have somebody to keep you lifted up.
Yeah, those are really great answers. And as I've been touring, one of the things I often hear from young journalists is that the things that happened to me are still happening to them. And that they really need, but I really help them to say, this is not for the faint of heart. But, if as you said, if you have some courage, it's still a great profession, and you can do so much good. One of the things that I always did, especially during the years of column writing at the Post, I just got so many of my ideas from the community. I would call people and say, what do you think of this? And if what they said resonated with me, that might be the angle I take in the whole column. I interviewed the people in the community. And I also had the experience many years before of growing up as a minister's daughter in an AME church where we were just surrounded as young people with just so much love, the love of our families, the love of the people in the church. And every time we did something, they would support it. I remember when I went away to college, they would send me $2 in an envelope, and it was like, oh, yes, I'll get out of the cafeteria today, But I think I agree that it is so much, we have to see them. And I'm grateful that I've been able to still mentor young people. And that means that I really do get to see them. I'm very proud of a young man that I started mentoring right after he graduated from Northwestern. And he was looking for a job. And I said, you've got to go to the National Association of Black Journalists Convention. I'll pay your way. You got to go. And he went and he did everything right. Instead of running around, trying to meet all of his peers, he went to the job fair every day. And he just stayed there, and he talked to people day after day. And he came out as the National Association of Black Journalists intern at Thomson Reuters. And it's been great to be able to talk to him over the last few weeks and months, because he's now a full-time staff member, and he has his first American Express card. And so he, so it is so important to see them, and they will see us if we see them. But this is a great group of women to travel with. Can I come with you guys?
Yes, we need you. This is really good.
The piece of advice I like to share with young folks these days is if you want to be woke, the most radical, revolutionary, wokest thing you can do, wokest, I made that up, wokest, is to be in relationship with someone, to build relationships with people. These days it's countercultural, because you can live your whole life in your house behind your computer screen. You don't have to talk to nobody. You don't have to go out. You can have everything delivered. Trust me, I know. From dry cleaning to groceries to
I still go to the grocery store. They
Let's
order
see.
everything.
I have one
Everything.
delivered, right? Well, why should I carry it? Somebody else will do that, right? So you don't have to be in relationship these days. You don't have to talk to anybody. So the most countercultural thing you can do is to build relationships with other people. That is how you create success in your life. We don't need no more Twitter warriors. We need people who are going to do the hand-to-hand combat of relationship creation and relationship building. That's how you rise in a ladder. Nobody hires you because you got 1 million Twitter followers. People hire you and invest in you because you know somebody. You can get somebody on the phone. You can touch the pulse of the people. You can be in conversation.
Y'all tell she a preacher.
So that's my advice to folks. Don't build your resume on how many Instagram people you have, but on how you can reach to communities and touch the pulse and feel the people. And that way you can represent something. As Reverend Jackson said, you can't out-white the white folk, but what they want you to do is be a pulse and a tie to a community that they don't know and they don't understand. So be in relationship.
Can I just add one point? Sir, can I just add one point before you? You know, I keep looking at Dr. Cole from the side of my eye, because, and she's now the chair of the National Council of Negro Women. She didn't have to do that. Let's start there. So let's give her. But when she was at Spelman, she just oozed black pride in women to me. I mean, everybody, well, I wanted to go to Spelman, and I had been out of college for 10 years, and I wanted to go to Spelman. But now, since she's been the chair of the National Council, every time we get an email from her office, it is so, I mean, it's just so inviting, and you want to read it because you can see she is even instilling to this day, people like us, still professionalism and how you treat our organization. So I just want to say thank you, because she did not have to do this. She should be living her life, as Oprah would say.
No, I want to piggyback on that, because I think you're going to bring a new generation into, because young women have so much respect for you. You know, NCNW has been, you know, without Dr. Height, it's been floundering a little bit, but I think you have just breathed new life into the organization. I'm so happy, because my office is in your building.
Well, I think we have time for a few questions. There is a microphone here. We'll be able to handle a few questions because we've got to make sure we end in time to make it over to the luncheon.
Good morning. My name is Janice, and I am the parent of 3 children, 2 college students, two college daughters, one at Northwestern, a journalism major, and the one at University of Miami. And I appreciate your information regarding networking. However, I want our seasoned people to understand what it truly means to network. My daughter has reached out on several occasions to those of us who are succeeding and has been told check in LinkedIn, checked in this, and are not understanding what it truly means to network a student who looks like us, who comes from an amazing background, and they're so busy pontification about life, they aren't really understanding what it means to take that person's resume to the hiring person's office, what it really means to share information. So it's great to understand what our students are giving about networking, but we as a seasoned audience have to really understand what that means to be a mentor. And what do you suggest to those when a college student calls up? What should that networking conversation look like from a seasoned person?
You know, Leah has said this a little bit on the road, and I think I want to just echo a little piece of this. First of all, there's a difference between networking and building relationships. And I think what they want to do is, if they want to pass us the resume, that's great, but it's easier if we know them. And I would say to them, you know, I have had kids call me Cole, and the difference between the ones that call me Cole that says, my mother knows Mignon, and she wants me to reach out to you because she wants me to have that foundation. Can I have lunch with you? Can I come see you? Can I talk to you? Can I have you look at my resume to make sure that I have the right things on it? And now it's a rare person that's just, but you know, they will find these people that will actually do that because they really want you to, and you're right, they want you to take time with them. They don't want to be dismissive. But I prefer the kid that wants to go to lunch with me or come sit in my office, and because I really want to hear how they're thinking. Because a lot of times you gotta weave and bob with them because, you know, they'll tell you some stuff. And like, come on, you got your girl, you know, they'll tell you some stuff. And you listening to them and you go, I get the preacher and Leah me, that's interesting. And then, but as they sit there and they begin to trust you, you can guide them. But I would say if they, first of all, make their list. They need to figure out who they want to get to know. Now you know 4 more women that you can tell them to call, and we can guide them if they got a list. And I say put your list together first and then figure out who knows who, because it's still relationships. That's what she said. It's really relationships.
And another thing, you know, I mentor a lot of young people, and I always tell them, when you come to meet with me, know what you want.
Yeah.
Don't just come and sit down and have coffee with me and get in my business.
I like to talk.
Yeah, I know you like to talk. But you know, know something about me. Why do you want to meet with me? What are you asking for? What are your goals? What are your objectives? Don't just come and sit down and just like, I don't want to just sit down and have a conversation with you. But I'm willing to help anybody who knows what they want and can articulate that. I think that's really important.
One of the things I also tell young people about journalism is to, you know, work hard and work smart. And I think part of what we're hearing today, part of that is building relationships. Part of it is coming prepared and also finding out something about the person you're talking with. But I think there's still a major role for African Americans in legacy media. You know, social media is great. We all use it. But the other thing is legacy media, television. Still, those are important places where we need to be seen and to be seen more. And many years ago, I remember Jim Vance. I'm sure many of you know about Jim. Some young man was having a hard time. And so Jim was talking to him, trying to encourage him, and he said, you know, there aren't very many of us. And the point is there really needs to be more, because one of the things that's disappointed me recently is that many minority communities feel that they are not being covered well. They feel like their ideas are not being sought. They just feel as though they've become invisible to the media. And sometimes it's because some of our millennials feel that, well, you know, we don't want to just cover black people. I said, that's a great story, you know, and there are just so many rich, interesting things that we do. And it's important for us to see ourselves, to see images of ourselves projected on television and newspapers, etc. That's what draws people in. But it's still a great career. It's not as, it's more complicated. It's more topsy-turvy now than it was back in, you know, the 60s and 70s with social media. Things are beginning to shake down. But I think that a lot of the newspapers are, with this present administration, they are seeing that they have done a very poor job of really helping Americans understand each other. Right. And if you don't have the diversity in the media, if you aren't sitting at the table when the decisions are made, you will often either not be represented or you'll be misrepresented. So
I would just offer one more thing. For those of us in the room who get the calls or who are interested in investing in a young person's life, make yourself available. All of us, somebody poured into us. So we should make it a priority to support the young people who call you. Some of them gonna be knuckleheads and they just want you to get them a job and a check. Okay, you're gonna get some of those. But we should all have it as a goal to try to connect with a young, at least set a goal for yourself, whatever your time will allow. 2 people, 3 people, 5 people a year. You need to be pouring back in to someone. So be open to the young people who call you, the young professionals that call you. They're calling you because they think you can help them. They think you know something that they need to know. So make yourself available and open and receptive to the ones that call.
We have time for one more quick question in the front, and then we'll have to move on.
Oh, okay, but I have the mic. Very quickly, I was talking with a young person in college who was depressed because so much is happening now with this administration, that so much racial discord is being sown, that you have young people who have not been told that there is a country that has a 400-year history of racism and discrimination, and we'll talk about a little later, that they're facing. And there are also immigrants. There are other people who are now seeing the racism in this country full force. What advice do you have to people who have been given a wake-up call that perhaps through the Obama administration they had another sense of this country, and now they see the country, the underlining, simmering things that were not on the surface as much before?
No.
You know, listen, I think you can probably, what that young person is feeling is probably 90% of this room. And one of the things that we are trying to tell them as we are out, seize this moment and seize your power. This man has taken the power from you when he causes you to sit in that room and just look at that TV and don't act. There are people probably in his dorm that are not registered to vote, that probably did not vote, that they can become active participants in their own government. I think people just think that the government is just sitting here in Washington and we're just waiting for them to just do right. That's not how it works. You know, what's this thing you give? A CEO will hire you for a job and he comes back and checks on you. This is what you have to do with the President of the United States of America and every politician that you hire. You have to go back and check on them, and we're trying to reinstill in them this image of being woke is taking your power back from these people. And that's how I actually got involved in politics. I went down to Harold Washington's office. I wanted to volunteer, and we put thousands of young people on the street for him. And then when he got elected, I went back to his office. Didn't know I needed an appointment, but I went back to the office and asked him to come to my church because I felt like we had delivered for him. I was woke enough to understand that. So I think we have, if we are in touch with these young people, we have to say to them, this is see, they will tell you, oh, the vote doesn't matter. We got to connect this vote to their livelihoods. We have to connect it to the college experience and the college money y'all putting out. So you got to really connect it back to their lives on a granular way and just tell them, don't sleep this. They can't be woke and sleep. It can't be that.
I agree with everything that Mignon said, but I'm depressed. Everybody is depressed. And I'm not saying that too. I am really, I've been depressed since November 9th, 2016. I'm serious. And don't take that lightly. Kids are killing themselves. Suicide rate, this mental health thing is no joke. And it could be Trump, it could be something else that's bothering these kids. It could be a lot of things. But anytime somebody tells you they're depressed, please follow up with that. They may need to see someone, they may need medication. This is no joke.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Well, I would say that I was depressed. I'm not anymore. I spent my days in bed post-election day in 2016. I was Hillary's personnel director, so I was putting together the cabinet. So we had our plan for how she was going to roll out her cabinet. And all of that changed in the blink of an eye. I came back to Washington, got in my bed, and that's where I was for 3 or 4 days. I was like Jesus in the tomb. But on the third day, y'all want me to take a text? Seriously, it was 3 days, and on the third day I got up when my father called me, and he said, what you doing? I said, I'm in bed. He said, how long you been in bed? 3 days. He said, you gotta write. You gotta write. This is horrible. We gotta pray. What is America? You gotta write. Stay in bed long as you want to. But when you're ready to get up, there are other people that are hurting. There are other people who are depressed. So if you are in pain, find somebody else in pain and help them. You gotta move forward. You can't stay in bed forever. Well, you could, but what's that gonna do? So I'm not depressed anymore because I got work to do. And I choose, and listen, I've been clinically diagnosed as depressed many years ago. I understand what that is. But I also understand that part of my healing is to keep moving forward, is to keep marching forward. As Harriet Tubman says, if you hear the dogs barking, keep going. And so for the young people, for a lot of them, this is a jarring experience because they've lived through 8 years of Obama with flowers and roses and everything is great. Welcome to the world. It's not all flowers and beds of ease. It's going to be hard times. It's going to be challenges. You're going to work a job where the boss don't like you. Learn the lesson and learn what you need to do for self-preservation so you can keep working because our people need you. And we need you to be moving forward. So if that means you need medication, take the medication. If it means you need to go walk by the water, walk by the water. If you need to go to a rally, go to a rally. Do what you need to do to make yourself whole and well and so that you can continue to move forward because the people need you.
Yeah, I think they also know that this is a time to take off the masks. You know how Paul Laurence Dunbar wrote about all the masks that black people wear, and I think many of us have had worn the masks when we were in maybe some white situation. You couldn't take it off fully, But I think we're at the point where these next 2 years are going to just be so crucial that individually we stand up and we speak. And we correct, and when we see things on Facebook or wherever that are denigrating, because things are stepping up on the other side. I mean, when Gucci comes up with something with blackface and red lips, and this is really this is something we have to take action about. I certainly agree that it is a very unsettling time, but if we can possibly, take the sheets off people like Donald Trump, and off the larger society. Yeah. And I think we can do that if we have some courage to take some of the masks off and say certain things to certain people that your parents couldn't say. they had no way to say what we are saying. You know, they don't have this audience. And so many of you are, you know, are very learned and very people who have been through so much. But I think, you know, if each of us could take off some of the masks and use this as part of our moving forward, that might also be helpful to young people to see.
Thank you. I'm sure that everyone will agree that this was a wonderful event, and we thank our panelists once again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Please, if you can exit the room. We are going to start seating for the luncheon now. Seating for the luncheon begins now. Please exit the room. Thank you so much. Thank you.